Let's finish up my series of prints made with a Hasselblad on a 120 film from trip to Hamburg. And with my old trusty traditions, let's bring up the chemicals to the proper temperature, and from there let's choose the frame and load it in the carrier. As you probably already know, my darkroom is actually my bathroom, so I have this photo station and closed containers for the chemicals, so I don't want to actually develop anything in open trays because it's not really safe for environment and for actually use, and it's collecting a lot of dust inside the chemicals, so it's not really optimal way, so I actually just skip it directly and will develop everything in the drums. So let's choose the last frame, what I have from my Hasselblad. As you see, it's a stripe number 3, so it's already shot number 9, and let's load it inside the carrier and take a look what we actually have and what we will work with. This shot was taken close to the evening. It should be a little bit warm, quite dense, so exposure was really correct. It's a bit overcast sky, no clouds, so it's a mid kind of a day shot, but because it's a winter, it's actually around 5 to 6 o'clock in the evening, and I'm expecting a little bit warmth, a little bit of kind of a blue sky in the same time, so it should be pleasant to print. So let's load it and take a look what we actually will work with. Let's turn off the lights and take a look on the print. So we have a half of the sky and half of the constructions, basically the recreation area in the Bay Area in Hamburg. I really like this place, so I will start with the printing of test prints, and from there let's take a look what we actually have with the exposure and different corrections. I will start with the color analyzer for initial point and start with the aperture around 8, something like this. So should be quite nice depth of field for paper to not create any problems. And also it's quite nice for the focusing, so it will be like in the middle of the focus here and without any problems. It's maybe not really like optimal method, but it works, so let's focus on the prints. It should be a lot of sharpness actually in the structures, but as always with the medium format prints, you kind of cannot see the grain there, so it's relatively small. At the moment I'm trying to work with the 10 seconds of exposure, so if I have too much exposure I actually dial in the cyan filter in a hat to make the exposure around 10 seconds. So with the settings I'm land exactly on the 10 seconds and adjust the photo hat accordingly. So let's transfer the time to my timer from Kaiser and check if it works correctly again. So I don't want to see any problems with the timer. And let's bring up my printing journal, so it helps a lot to make consistent prints and actually learn. A lot of people actually underestimate the learning curve procedure here, because you for sure know which settings you take, you for sure can go back with the settings and you can reproduce the same print, but also you can literally see and analyze everything on one sheet of paper. So let's start with the printing. Let's turn on the dark light here and let's open up the paper. When I load the paper in the drum, usually I recheck the temperature for the first print. It should be 35 degrees exactly, so after development I don't have any problems with the first test strip. So let's take a look what we start with. So after color analyzer, it should be more or less in the proper range at least of color and exposure. So and from there you can make or artistic adjustments or just to correct the print a little bit if it has a cast of some sort. For example, your temperature a little bit off, or the color analyzer is actually not quite precise. So it really depends how you set it up and how you make the procedures to work. Usually I make one small run with the squeegee on top of the paper. It's not a lot of water, it's not really sorbing anything, but it's removing this like coating water on top. So and after it you can clean it up and dry it up with a hair dryer or just on air. It's really not critical. idea of the first test print is actually getting the neutral color picture. So, and this print is quite good. I really like the initial settings what I have from the color calibrator, and this area is quite nice and gray, so I don't have any color cast here. Maybe a little bit cold, so kind of a cyanish. So I will correct it with a cyan filter here, and after developing of the test prints, we will check if we will correct it or not really. I will make a corrections with the step of 5 with the cyan filter to correct this a little bit cyanish cast on the ships on the middle of the picture. When you watch the print, you can easily see the difference between the colors. So this was a step, really like small 5 steps, and I don't need a lot of steps here, but you can see it's changing perception of color in the whole picture. So even on a wet print, you can make a guesses what corrections you need. It's not really changing anywhere from this print. So I just apply the squeegee, remove the water from the surface of the print, and dry it with a hair dryer. And after this procedure, I make all decisions about the color and what actually settings I will put in the final print. And as always, never forget to put any notes inside your print. So I usually mark it directly on paper just in case if I lose it or if it's like get shifted or something. So I just mark it close enough to the print itself, so I know this is like cyan filter there, and I change only cyan filter. So this is my final settings, and I choosing these settings on the photo head, and from there I will make a bigger print. Also, you can compare it to the initial test print. So because it's a sections, you even can easily cut it out from there to compare how it looks like in a picture. So my settings probably will be around 70, 65, 70. So I'll set up 70 on the head, and from there I will check if the bigger picture looks fine. So removing test printer and put up the easel, line it up the easel with the framing, what I want to see in the final picture. Refocus again on the easel, and from this point I just make a bigger print and take a look if I want to make any dodging and burning on top of the print. So development, as always, quite easy. I just need to be careful with the first rotations to not hold the fresh developer long enough on the one spot of the negative. But if you put enough of developer and enough of Blix inside the cup in the Jobber tank, it should be fine. So you basically flood the whole print inside the tank after one rotation, and it's fine. So it's not so critical. I never have a problem with any lines, any undeveloped parts and things like this. Only if it's water drop gets on the print. So this is crucial part. So this is why I'm drying with a cloth or just air dry the drum before I make the final prints to remove this occasionally drops putting on top of the paper, which can remove the speed of development. And now, after I finish development, let's take a look on moment of truth if we have a final print or if I need to make any corrections. So when I unload this first big print, I realized I make a mistake, and I'm just thinking where this mistake actually laid down. So it can be chemical, it can be a time, it can be, for example, I forget to switch the filters inside the head, but actually colors looks nice. It's only different type of exposure. I thought from the beginning it's timer problem again, so I dried up and just check what I have in the rest of the picture, like alignment, lines, and after drying, I realized I just forget to switch off the diaphragm to the closed position. So it was fully open diaphragm at 5.6, and I need a F8 for this print. But as you can see, I have plenty of sky here, and the sky is really like blue. For some reason I have these stripes in the sky. I don't really understand where it comes from, probably directly from the negative, but I don't really understand what is the problem there. So let's fix my mistake, put the diaphragm of F8, but now I just want to burn the sky more. So I set up the 10 seconds and I will make 2 runs. The first run I will just expose the whole picture, and on the second run I will use this cardboard and patch this part of the picture to make it less dark. So I will basically burn most of the sky to reveal this blue color. I never done such a big burn before, especially on the sky. I think it's much more practical to do it on the negative. So if you have a proper setup, so you can use the gradual filter on top of the negative, and your negative will be more or less in the same range. So it's much easier to print in a darkroom from the beginning, and you have much more space for adjustments. So your sky is not really like gone on the negative. You really easy to can like correct it, and you don't need like twice of time with the dirtying and burning. So I have here 8 seconds for the sky only, and 10 seconds for the whole picture. And I hope after development, because it's 2 exposures, see everything aligned, see everything corrected, and at least see proper exposure, and see a lot of blue sky and proper exposure and a little bit warmish colors on the whole image, because I make corrections for the cyan. So this is initial goal, and now let's just realize how the picture looks like. And unfortunately I have one more error. I'm not really sure where it came from. It looks like double exposure, and I'm realized maybe I moved the easel after first exposure to the next exposure, because I move my hands on top with the card, and I get this error. So you see this line, this is actually second line of the frame, and it means I make a little bit of like movement and rotation on easel. So this is error, but in principle I have a lot of sky here, it's blue, and I really like the colors in this section. So the section of colors I really like. So let's fix this problem, and I think this kind of a setup, it's a bit flimsy, so I don't really understand why easels made like this, and it's not really static under the picture. I think at the moment I remove all of my errors, so let's proceed with the developing. So it's a 45 seconds in the color developer and 45 seconds in the bleach fix. It's quite easy process, as I said before, so I just started the timer and begin with the rotation. And it's important to rotate fast enough from the beginning, because otherwise you can get a little bit of different exposure, like lines, on the print. So try to avoid it. So I rotate by hand. I don't really see any reason why I need like automatic rotation here, because development time is quite fast. So I have a trained hands, and it's not a big deal. So after end of the development, let's remove the print from the drum and wash it thoroughly. So here, this is our final print. I try to wash more the only final prints, because it's better for storage. So you remove all the chemicals. Unfortunately, I don't have any kind of a filter or deionized water in a infinite amount to wash the prints in a pure water for storage. So, but at least for now it works good enough. So I always apply the squeegee and dry it with a hair dryer, and never get a really bad results with this technique. So we will see how it actually stores with time, but it's not so important prints. I don't want to be collective snob here. More or less this print is important only for me. So, and this is our final print. So let's talk about a little bit of exposure. So I really like the middle ground exposure here, and whole concept of lines here in this picture. I still have a lot of sky. I don't really understand what is this whitish line in the sky. Probably it's just from the negative itself. So the bottom line, I actually really like the contrast here and different types of like grayish yellowish colors. I have a few defects always on the prints. It's kind of a bending line, but it's just because the print not really have like thick paper. It's really thin paper. So, and you can compare from the initial test print to the final print. I have much more sky there, and the colors less kind of a cyan greenish there. It's more yellowish, and it's more represent the mood of the picture itself. When you have a print on hand, you can easily compare all the details. For example, this part, what I use for color corrections from this print. So you can see I've removed the bluish tints, and now it's more neutral and more yellowish, and the whole balance of the picture is better. So I really like the final results, and in future I will make a review of the prints what I made with the Hamburg collection.